So if you have ever tried to learn Japanese, whether it was for a semester in college or you just went on a furious 2-week binge on Duolingo before a trip, you have inevitably hit the wall. The Great Wall of Grammar.
The particles.
The particles, specifically two tiny one-syllable sounds that have probably caused more headaches, more confusion, and more dropouts than any other feature of the language. Wa and ga.
It is the ultimate gatekeeper. You can learn the vocab, you can master the polite forms, you can even, memorize the kanji. But if you mix up wa and ga, you don't just sound foreign. You sound like you don't understand the logic of the world you're describing.
That's terrifying. And the standard advice is so frustrating. You open a textbook, usually on page 1, and it says wa marks the topic, ga marks the subject.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, but in the sentence, I eat an apple, isn't I both the topic and the subject?
Exactly. And that's where the teacher usually smiles, maybe sweats a little, and says, well, it depends on the nuance.
Nuance. The word teachers use when they don't want to explain the rule, because the rule is actually like a 10-page flowchart. But today, we are going past the nuance. We're going to try and actually solve this.
We are.
We have a paper on the stack today titled Japanese Particles and Information Structure, a Formal Analysis by Akira Otani from Osaka Gakuen University.
And don't let the formal analysis part scare you off.
It did scare me a little. Formal analysis usually means math.
It does involve a bit of logic, but what Otani is doing here is, it's really important. He's arguing that the reason you're confused, the reason wasn't ga feels so random, is that you're only looking at half the picture.
Oh.
You're looking at the word, the syntax, but you're ignoring the information structure.
Information structure. Okay, so this is our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just looking at grammar rules. We're going to figure out how Japanese actually encodes information.
Yeah.
And why a simple change in pitch or particle can, turn a compliment into an insult.
Exactly. And to do that, we have to stop thinking about grammar as just word order. Subject, verb, object. We have to think about news.
News, like the 6 o'clock news.
In a way, every sentence you speak in any language is a mix of old news and new news. In linguistics and in Otani's paper, we call these the theme and the rime.
Okay, hold on. Let's define these before we go any deeper, because Otani uses these terms constantly. Theme and rime.
Think of the theme as the ground you're standing on. It's the topic we are already discussing. It's the anchor.
Okay.
So if we're talking about the president, then the president is the theme. It's old info. We already know who we're talking about.
Got it. And the rime?
The rime, that's R-H-E-M-E, is the destination. It's the new information. It's the answer to the question, what about the president? If I say, the president is eating a sandwich, the eating a sandwich part is the rime.
That's the point of the sentence.
That's the point, yeah.
That seems straightforward enough. But English doesn't really have particles to mark this, does it? We don't have a little word that says, hey, everyone, the next word is the room.
No, we don't. But we do have a mechanism. We use prosody, which is just a fancy way of saying voice stress or intonation.
Ah, okay.
The paper uses a great example for this. The sentence is, the president hates the Delft china set.
Very specific. The Delft china set, not just any china.
A very specific grievance, yeah. So imagine I ask you, who hates the china set? How do you answer that naturally?
I'd say the president hates the china set.
Right. You punched the word president. By stressing it, you marked it as the rime, the new info.
Okay.
But what if I ask, how does the president feel about the china?
Then I'd say the president hates the china set.
Exactly. Same words,
Yeah.
same order. But the meaning shifted completely because of where you put the stress. In English, stress is our highlighter pen. It tells the listener what matters.
Okay, I follow. But this is where Japanese gets messy. Because Japanese has the stress, the pitch accent, but also has these little sticky tags, the particles.
Right.
And the textbook rule, the one I learned on day 1, is that wa, theme, old info, and ga, rime, new info.
That is the day 1 rule. And to be fair, it works
Yeah.
maybe 60% of the time.
60%. Not great odds.
Not great. And Otani's paper is all about why that rule breaks down. He argues it is not a one-to-one mapping. You cannot just see a wall and assume, oh, that's the topic.
So wa can be a double agent.
In a way, yes. And this is the first big insight from the paper. Wa is usually the polite topic marker, but under the right conditions, wa can actually mark the rime, the new emphatic information.
Wait, okay, walk me through this. When does wa flip sides? Because if I can't trust wa, I don't know what to trust.
It depends entirely on that music we talked about, the pitch. Let's look at the example the paper uses. It involves the president again, but this time he's eating chocolates.
A man of the people.
Like, So the standard sentence is, Deitoryu wa chokorito mishigate imasu. As for the president, he is eating chocolates.
Right. Standard. Daitoryu wa. Low pitch, nice and flat.
Exactly. In that version, president is the theme. We know we're talking about him. But what happens if you put a heavy stress, a high-pitch accent on the wa phrase?
So instead of Daitoryu wa, I say Daitoryu wa. Or, wait, you could stress the object, right?
Let's stick with the object for a second to see the contrast. Imagine someone asks, what is the president eating? And you answer, chokorito wa mishigat imasu. But you really slam the stress on chocolates.
Chocolates wa is eating.
Right. When you stress a wa-marked word like that, it creates what's called a contrastive rime. You aren't just saying he is eating chocolates. You're implying something very specific.
Contrastive. So it's like, he is eating chocolates, but I'm not so sure about the broccoli.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. The nuance translates to something like, it is at least chocolates that he is eating. It implies a comparison. Well, as for the chocolates, he's eating those. I can't speak for the cookies, but the chocolates are definitely being eaten.
That is so passive-aggressive, it feels like you're throwing grammatical shade.
It really is. And this is why beginners get into so much trouble. If you use way to introduce yourself, but you accidentally stress it because you're nervous, you might sound like you're making a contrast that you didn't mean to.
I am at least John.
I don't know who that guy is, but I am John.
Wow. Okay, so way isn't just a label. It interacts with the pitch to create this at least or contrast vibe. But Otani goes even further. He talks about the scope of the rime. This part broke my brain a little bit when I was reading it.
It's a bit abstract, but it's crucial. So if I ask, what is the president doing? And you say, chocolate's why he is eating. With that heavy stress,
Right.
the new information isn't just the word chocolate. The new information is the whole act of eating chocolates.
Right, because the question wasn't, what is he eating? The question was, what is he doing?
Exactly. So even though the particle was physically stuck to the word chocolate, the spotlight of the rime spreads out to cover the entire verb phrase. Otani calls this focus projection.
Focus projection. It sounds like a superpower.
It basically means the particle is a flag, but the light from that flag shines on the whole area around it. This is why just looking at syntax, just the word order fails.
Because you'd assume wa only affects the word chocolate.
But semantically, it's coloring the whole action.
This really drives home the point that you can't analyze Japanese on paper, you have to hear it. But okay, we have to pivot to the other side of the coin. The villain of the story, Ga.
Ga isn't a villain, but it is intense.
Well, it's the subject marker, usually. But Otani says it's much more specific than that.
Right. So if wa, with stress, creates contrast, at least this, then ga, with stress, creates what's called exhaustive listening.
Exhaustive listing. That sounds like a chore.
It's actually a logical lockdown. Let's go back to the president. If I ask, who is eating chocolates?
And I answer, Daitoryu ga mashigata imasu. President Ga is eating.
By using ga here, you are doing something very, very powerful. You aren't just saying the president is eating. You are saying it is the president and only the president who is eating.
Whoa. So if the vice president is also in the room eating chocolates, that sentence is technically a lie.
Correct. If you had used wa, the contrastive version, it would be non-exhaustive. You're leaving the door open. But ga slams the door shut. It says, the list of people eating chocolates has exactly one name on it, Daitoryu.
That is a massive difference. It turns a simple description into an exclusion.
It really does.
Yeah.
And this is why you see ga used in context where you need to identify the one and only culprit who broke the window. Tanaka ga broke it. You're singling him out.
So Ga is the pointer finger of judgment.
Effectively, yes. But, and here's where the paper gets really fascinating, there is an exception to this judgment rule, and it has to do with out-of-the-blue statements.
Right. I loved this part. This is when you just run into a room and yell some news. There's no context. No one asked a question.
Exactly. Let's say you burst into the room and say, the president bought chocolates. Daitoryu ga chokorito kai mashita. In this case, there is no topic. You weren't saying, as for the president, because we weren't talking about him.
The entire sentence is the rime. The whole thing is the new news.
Yes. This is an all-rime sentence. And here, ga doesn't necessarily have that heavy, exhaustive, only him vibe. It's just marking the subject of this brand new event.
Otani points out a trap here, a trap involving running versus dying.
The run versus die distinction. This is a classic problem in Japanese linguistics.
Okay, lay it out for us. Why can the president die, but he can't run? Grammatically speaking, of course.
It has to do with the type of verb. So suppose you run into the room and shout, the president ran! Turyuga Hashirimashita.
Okay, the president ran. Seems fine.
To a native speaker, that sounds weird as purely breaking news, because run is an active verb. The president decided to run. It's something he did. When you have an active subject like that, the GAC tends to get sticky. It sticks to the subject.
So it defaults to sounding like I'm answering the question, who ran?
Exactly. Even if you didn't mean to. The grammar itself forces that exhaustive or identifying reading, it sounds like. It was the president who ran, and not the prime minister. You can't just present the whole event as neutral news.
Okay, but the president died.
Turyuga Nakunari. That works perfectly as breaking news.
Why? I mean, what is the deep difference between running and dying here?
Because dying isn't something you technically do, it's something that happens to you. In linguistics, we call these unaccusative verbs.
Unaccusative, that sounds like a legal term.
It just means the subject isn't an agent. He's not the doer, he's the experiencer. Otani argues that with these happening verbs, the subject doesn't hog the spotlight. It allows that new news status to spread out over the whole sentence.
So, the president died is processed as one big block of news. But the president ran gets split into who and did what.
Precisely. The verb choice creates a constraint on how the particle is even interpreted.
Constraint. That word keeps coming up. It feels like we are building a machine here. The pitch constrains the particle. The verb constrains the interpretation.
And the machine gets its biggest stress test in the next section. The double gap mystery.
Oh, man. This is the thing that makes beginners want to just quit. Japanese allows sentences with two subjects, two gas in a row.
The multiple nominative construction,
The example in the paper is Daitorio ga hissyo ga yune desu.
which literally translates to President Ga's secretary get efficient is.
It is the president whose secretary is efficient. But how does the listener's brain even process that? How do you know which ga is doing what?
This is where Otani's formal analysis really shines. He argues that the first ga, the president, is the big subject. And crucially, he says this first ga is obligatorily rame.
Obligatorily rame, so it has to be the focus, no matter what.
It has to be. You can't use this structure to just casually chat about the president. You are effectively saying, of all the people who have efficient secretaries, it is the president who fits that description.
It's that exhaustive listing again.
Yes. And there's a test for this. You can ask a question that targets the first ga. Who is it whose secretary is efficient? That works. But you can't really target the second ga.
You can't ask the president who's what is efficient in this structure.
Not really, no.
Right.
Because the first ga sets the domain. Think of the first ga as a bucket.
A bucket.
The bucket is the president, and the second ga, the secretary, and the adjective efficient all have to sit inside that bucket. There has to be a relationship. A president has a secretary.
So I can't just pick two random things. I can't say the pizza ga, the moon ga is bright.
Yeah. Because the moon is bright is not a property of the pizza, unless it's a very poetic pizza. The grammar itself requires a semantic link. The first ga restricts the universe of the second ga.
Okay, so stepping back. We've covered contrastive wa, exhaustive ga, unaccusative verbs, and now double subjects. My head is spinning a little. Why does this have to be so complicated? Why can't it just be subject and topic?
Because human communication is complicated. We aren't just transmitting facts like a computer. We're transmitting emphasis, contrast, emotion, exclusion. And Otani's point is that to handle all that complexity, Japanese uses a system called HPSG.
Head-driven phrase, structure grammar.
It's a mouthful.
Oh.
But don't get hung up on the name. Think of the concept. Traditional grammar, the stuff in your textbook, is usually linear. Word A plus word B equals meaning C.
Right. It feels like a straight line.
Otani says real Japanese grammar is a triangle of constraints. So imagine a triangle. The top point is syntax, the particles, the word order. The bottom right is phonology, the pitch, the stress. And the bottom left is information structure, the theme, the rame.
And they are all pulling on each other at the same time.
Exactly. You can't understand the meaning, the information structure, just by looking at the particle, the syntax. You need the sound, the phonology to bridge that gap.
So if I ignore the pitch accent, I'm effectively ignoring 1/3 of the grammar.
Yes, and that's why Y-topic fails. It's trying to solve a three-dimensional puzzle with a one-dimensional rule.
This is a huge realization for me. I always treated pitch accent as like decoration. You know, if I get it wrong, I sound like a foreigner, but people will still understand me. But you're saying I might be fundamentally changing the logic of my sentence.
You absolutely are. If you stress the wrong particle, you might be turning a simple statement of fact like, I like apples, into a weirdly aggressive exclusionary claim. It is I who likes apples, unlike you.
Or imply a contrast. I like apples, but I hate your pear.
And you'd never know why the person you're talking to looks so confused or offended.
That is terrifying, but also kind of empowering. Because now I know why I might be confusing them.
Exactly. It brings order to the chaos.
Before we wrap up, there was one little nugget in the paper that I wanted to highlight. Otani compares Japanese to Catalan.
Yes, this is a fascinating parallel. Catalan and some other Romance languages also rely really heavily on this information structure to dictate how sentences are formed, much more than English does.
But here is the thought that I can't get out of my head now. If intonation and pitch are actually hidden grammar, literal grammatical markers, how much are we missing when we read Japanese?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right, because if I pick up a novel, I don't hear the pitch. I see the characters, I see wa, I just assume it's a theme. But what if the author heard it in their head as a stressed, contrastive rime?
We simulate it. Just like when you read English, you mentally add the stress, I didn't say she stole the money, versus I didn't say she stole the money. You are performing the text in your head.
But for a learner, I don't know how to perform it yet. I'm kind of tone deaf.
Which means you might be missing the entire emotional subtext or the logical focus of a scene. It suggests that to truly be literate in Japanese, you actually need to be good at listening first.
Wow.
You need to internalize those pitch constraints so your brain can sort of hallucinate them correctly when you read.
Hallucinating grammar. I like that. It makes listening practice feel really high stakes.
It is. It's the key to the whole system.
Well, a huge shout out to Akira Otani for this paper. It is dense, and it is definitely formal analysis, but it shines a light on the machinery under the hood.
It turns a headache into a puzzle, and puzzles are solvable.
Exactly. So the next time you are watching anime or struggling through a conversation, listen for the stress, listen for the pitch. It's not just music, it's the code.
Keep your ears open.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.